Marky
At the moment, there's a lot of hype going around about All Elite Wrestling getting a weekly TV show. It's made some fans reminisce on the days of the Monday Night Wars between WWF and WCW. It was a crazy time when two massive wrestling promotions battled it out for the top spot in the wrestling industry. But as recently as 2010, another wrestling company, TNA, battled the WWE giants on Monday nights as they tried to take the crown from WWE. I'm going to be covering what went down on both shows throughout 2010 and see if there's anything that All Elite Wrestling could learn from the time that TNA battled WWE in 2010 on Monday nights. I'm Marky Danger. I've been away for a bit in Mexico, so sorry about that, no offence, but I am back now, so make sure you hit subscribe and shove it, and let's get straight into this one. It all started when TNA signed Hulk Hogan, and there was so much hype around this signing. The network that TNA was on was Spike TV. They agreed to trial Monday nights for TNA, with Hulk Hogan headlining the show. TNA had typically run their shows on a Thursday night, so the Spike TV network and TNA were a bit cautious about moving to Monday nights, even if it was for a trial basis. The first show was to take place on January the 4th, 2010. The show would be a special show, 3 hours long, and the first hour of the show would run unopposed, but the rest of the 2 hours would run in line with WWE Raw, so this was quite a momentous occasion. There was lots of hype and lots of threats coming from Hulk Hogan and TNA saying how they were going to take all WWE's ratings and they were going to become the new #1 wrestling show, so there was a lot of shots fired straight away. The show starts out with Bubba the Love Sponge, one of TNA's newest hirings, and fans threatening WWE outside the arena. The opening match starts after 6 minutes of Hulk Hogan hype. It's an X-Division Steel Asylum match. This match has gone down in notoriety. It was the Motor City Machine Guns, Lethal Consequences, Homicide, Hayoshi, Suicide, and Amazing Red, who is the X-Division champion at the time, although this is a non-title match. The match itself is confusing to start with because a lot of these wrestlers are in tag teams and a couple of them are single wrestlers, but it's actually a match where everyone takes on everyone. The aim of the match is to escape outside the cage. However, it's not your normal cage match, so it's not easy to escape outside the cage. To start with, just look at this match. It looks horrible. I can't see anything that's going on in the ring. The red bars are just too thick. And this would have been the first thing that some of the new fans tuning in to TNA would have seen on their show, a match they can't actually watch. To make matters worse, the match is then thrown out as Homicide attacks the other wrestlers with a baton. He then tries to climb out the cage but can't. It's very painful to watch. He climbs very slowly and gets stuck at the top. Then all the other wrestlers try and catch up to get him, and then Homicide just falls off into the middle of the cage. I'm not sure what they are attempting here. Then suddenly some strange music starts playing, and Jeff Hardy appears in the crowd. This was really bad. He takes out Homicide, who has now got out of the cage, and then he climbs up the cage and Hardy just sits at the top smiling, and this wraps up the first 15 minutes of the show. You've got to remember, this was Jeff Hardy though. He had been wrestling for WWE very recently and was a massive star in WWE, but TNA never mentioned Jeff Hardy again on this show. To the back now, and Nash is there saying that Hogan's on his way and he won't be coming to the show alone. ODB and Tara up next in a title match. Tara kicks her ass for a few minutes, but ODB wins by pulling the trunks and wins the gold without really getting much offense in. Straight to the back again, and a limo has pulled up. This time it's Ric Flair making his TNA debut, and he heads to AJ Styles' locker room, so there's a lot of intrigue as to what's going on there. Outside the arena, Mick Foley's arrived, but security tell him he's been banned from the arena. Bobby Lashley then arrives and comes straight to the ring with his wife, Crystal. Crystal says Bobby has better things to be doing than TNA, and asks for his release. This was quite a strange thing to put on this show where a lot of new fans be watching. A wrestler saying he had better things to be doing than being on TNA, a bit like fans had better things to be doing than watching this programme. Backstage, Velvet and the Beautiful People announced they'll be playing strip poker throughout the show, but this was a massive letdown. Lacey Von Erich loses the first hand and has to take her top off. Meanwhile, backstage, Hall and X-Pac have turned up and they're trying to get in the building, but security stop them. They come in through the crowd instead. Everyone is trying to get a view of Hogan's TNA debut. Also, it's quite funny that Hall and X-Pac get in the building, but other people won't find it so easy as the show goes on. Hang on, let's check the time. I think Raw is starting on the other station. Let's see what they're up to. Let's change the channel. Okay, WWE Raw. The show's opened up with a hype package for Bret Hart returning to the company after 12 years. WWE were using Bret to make sure that WWE got a good rating and combated TNA's debut of Hulk Hogan. Bret comes out to open the show. He calls out Shawn Michaels and the two meet in the middle of the ring for the first time since the Montreal Screwjob. They both talk about their history and agree to a handshake. They then hug it out. Bret then calls out Vince, but he doesn't show up. And this would be the running theme for the rest of the show, with Bret trying to get hold of Vince McMahon. Okay, let's switch back to TNA and see what they were doing whilst Bret Hart was on WWE Raw. After lots of build, Hogan finally makes his way out. Hogan talks about how TNA is going to be the next big company and how great it is. He makes sure to put himself over as much as he can. Hall and X-Pac are then invited into the ring by Hogan. They said they're here to party and earn big money. Hogan says that things have changed and it is not about that anymore. This brings out Kevin Nash. Kevin says that Hogan told him they would be partying, but Hogan said he was wrong. Poor Nash. This then brings out Eric Bischoff, and he says everyone has to earn their place in the company, and the Wolfpack all leave the ring together. Bischoff then asks for a script from the director and then tears it up and saying we're starting over. Hogan says if you can't talk or wrestle, we're shipping you off up north. It's worth noting that TNA took a few shots at WWE, but WWE didn't really take any shots at TNA. Sting is shown watching from the rafters. Gosh, Sting in the rafters again? Didn't this already happen in like 1996? Pass the remote, let's check out WWE Raw instead. Justin Roberts tracks down Vince McMahon backstage, who says he will meet Bret Hart later on tonight. Back in the ring, Maurice takes on Brie Bella in a tournament to crown a new Divas champion. Maurice wins after the Bella twins switch place, but it doesn't work out, so it was pointless. A short match. Miz then meets Maurice back on the ramp and says he might call her back one day, forecasting a future for them together. Miz is out to do commentary and scout the wrestlers in the next match. He is the US champion, and there is a fatal four-way to decide the number one contender. The participants are Swagger, MVP, Carlito and Mark Henry. Carlito and Mark Henry don't even get an entrance. MVP wins a short match after hitting Swagger with the Playmaker and becoming the number one contender for the US title to bring us to the half-hour mark on Raw. Let's flick back to TNA. Back in TNA, the Knockouts Tag Team title is on the line. Wow, I forgot this belt even existed. This will definitely be covered in an upcoming video. It's the team of Awesome Kong and Hamada, another one I forgot even existed, be the champions at this time, Taylor Wilde and Sarita. During the match, the Motor City Machine Guns are shown getting attacked backstage, and they're lying on the floor dead. Hamada and Kong win the belts after a dropkick powerbomb combination. Backstage, the former Val Venus has barged into the Beautiful People's locker room playing cards, and decides to join them. In another area backstage, Mick Foley is still not being allowed in the building. Then the Nasty Boys turned up, but they're also not allowed in the building. I don't know why these guys didn't just copy what Hall and X-Pac did. Back in the ring, Raven and Dr. Stevie with Daphne are beaten in about 30 seconds by Matt Morgan and Hernandez. Away backstage, the Pope is being interviewed about his match with Wolf later in the show. Then Orlando Jordan interrupts him to make his first TNA appearance. He's also looking for Hogan's office. This is definitely time for me to change the channel back to Raw. Back on Raw, Jericho are backstage talking about their match about DX for the tag belts. If they lose the match, Jericho is chucked off Raw. Jericho says he needs to talk to Bret Hart about it and meets with him. He asks Bret to referee the match and screw DX out of the match, but Bret says no, he doesn't want any more problems or controversies. Hornswoggle backstage with Triple H is promoting wrestling figures. Shawn then walks up and asks what they're doing. Santino then walks up dressed as Jericho and Hornswoggle attacks him. Triple H gives Hornswoggle a cookie to thank him. This was so cringy and painful to watch. The match is up next and it's Jericho versus DX. Jericho did some Hogan impressions during the match, and this was the only reference WWE even made to TNA. DX win after Hornswoggle distracts Jericho, who gets hit with the sweet chin music. Jericho now has to leave Raw and DX leads the crowd singing goodbye. This went on for a while. Seems like a good time to switch back to TNA. Back in TNA land, Desmond Wolfe is taking on the Pope in a match that tried to be technical in 3 minutes. Pope wins with a small package. In the back now, and Rhino has been attacked by someone. The lighting is so poor here. Probably a good thing because Bubba the Love Sponge is on the microphone. World champion AJ Styles is then backstage meeting Eric Bischoff, who says AJ will be putting the world title on the line tonight against Kurt Angle. Jeff Jarrett is then shown walking backstage and comes out to the ring. He comes out to put over the TNA originals and say how great they are, but then he is interrupted by Hogan, who suddenly turned heel. He's horrible to Jeff. He says Jeff has run the company into the ground and Jeff Jarrett is no longer Dixie's partner, and it's all about Hogan from now on. Nobody cares about Jeff, and it's time for Jeff to get back in the ring. This was completely out of nowhere, and I'm not sure why Hogan went all heel on Jarrett for no reason. Across the arena, Daniels is trying to cut an interview backstage, but he's interrupted by Mick Foley, who's still trying to get in the building as he wants to talk to Hulk. Mick Foley pushes past Jeremy Borash. He finally succeeds in getting in the building. Back over on Raw, Vince is backstage with Orton. Orton says he will punt Bret Hart in the head if Vince agrees to it, and in return, Orton will become the 30th entrant in the Royal Rumble. but Vince actually rejects the offer. Orton walks on down the corridor to find Legacy, who threaten to beat him up if he can't beat Kofi Kingston later in the night. Then there's an advert to promote that Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, will be the Raw guest host next week. Wow, that's 2 good guest hosts in a row. We didn't get much of that during the guest host era. World Champion Sheamus out next now. He's been feuding with Cena. He recently won his first title in that table match with Cena where he got lucky and pushed him off the top rope. Evan Bourne comes out to challenge him. Bourne came close to the upset, but in the end quickly lost to Sheamus. Michael Cole then acknowledges the passing of Dr. Death Steve Williams. A long hype package is then played about the Montreal Screwjob and the upcoming Bret Hart Vince McMahon confrontation. Next up, it's the main event of Raw. It's Orton versus Kofi Kingston. They've been having a feud for a few months at this point. Orton wins the match with an RKO after a great back and forth match. He raises his hand in victory and Legacy just kind of stare at him from ringside. All of this has got me thinking, I wonder if the Nasty Boys managed to get into the arena yet. Let's switch back to TNA to see what's going on. Jeff Hardy is shown backstage with his weird stoner friend Shannon Moore, painting an ugly picture of himself. Shannon says it's time for them to go and meet Hogan. Abyss takes on Samoa Joe next, who is covering for Rhino, who was taken out earlier in the night by a mystery attacker. This was when Abyss was at his most idiotic, and soon he would become Hogan's best friend, a completely unbearable time period for Abyss in TNA. Joe was also lost in the shuffle as usual. Anyway, Joe taps out Abyss in the Coke Eater clutch. Backstage, Crystal Lashley meets with Eric Bischoff to ask for a meeting with Hogan to discuss Lashley's release from the company, but Eric tells her to get in line with everybody else. The whole show seems to be built around a meeting everyone is going to have with Hogan. Somewhere else backstage, beer money had been taken out and Bubba the Love Sponge is there in the darkness again, trying to tell us about it. The Nasty Boys are then shown trying to get in the arena. They manage to fool security to sneak into the building. Outside the building, Jeff Hardy and his weird stoner friend are celebrating getting something from their meeting with Hogan. Some underage Jeff Hardy fans run up to him and ask for autographs. Instead, Jeff gives him the portrait he was painting earlier on. The Nasty Boys are shown breaking into Team 3D's locker room, who are away in Japan at the moment. The Nasty Boys absolutely trash the locker room and spray paint all over it. Seeing this much of the Nasty Boys is enough to make anyone want to change the station. Back to Raw we go. Vince comes out to the ring in the long final segment. He hypes up Mike Tyson being the guest host next week. Bret Hart then walks out to the ring and squares up to Vince. Vince talks Bret down and talks through what happened at Survivor Series, and you think that Vince and Bret have finally put their differences to rest. They go on to talk about all Bret Hart's accomplishments and the two shake hands. Vince then turns around and kicks Bret in the nuts and walks off, leaving him laying as Raw comes to a close. So, how did TNA close out their 3-hour show? Pass the remote, please. TNA closed out their show with an amazing AJ Styles Kurt Angle main event for the world title. During the match, a masked man would run out and attack AJ, but Kurt Angle helps AJ to throw him out of the ring. This masked man would turn out to be a returning Tomko. An amazing back and forth match is taking place and the crowd start chanting, "Who needs Bret?" in response to Raw. Ric Flair then comes out to watch the match. He'd been in AJ's locker room earlier on. Kurt kicked out of 3 Styles clashes and AJ kicked out of a top rope angle slam. AJ eventually wins the match with a springboard 450 splash. Hogan then comes out to say how great the match was. However, he is interrupted by a backstage altercation. The camera cuts backstage to Mick Foley, who's searching for Hogan. He barges into Val Venus and the Beautiful People's poker game, but it's actually too dark to see anything, so it's pointless. He then barges into Eric Bischoff's office. Seriously, can't TNA afford to have any lights switched on? This whole corridor and office were pitch black. Foley is threatening Eric Bischoff, but then Hall, Nash and X-Pac attack him from behind. Just as this is happening, Hogan arrives and looks confused about whether to side with his friends or to side with Foley. And that's how the show ends. Okay, so after watching both shows, I really do believe TNA put on the better show overall. It did get a bit confusing at times with all the bodies, and then there was a lot of pointless wrestling characters being featured here. There was also a lot of stuff going on backstage. I think I lost count of how many times I used the word backstage there. Raw's show was completely built around the Bret and Vince confrontation at the end of the show. If you did not know or like Bret Hart, it would have been difficult to enjoy the show, but it was quite streamlined and it was clear where it was going. There wasn't a lot of other stuff to get confused over in the Raw show. Hogan really only had one long segment on TNA, so you didn't have to like him or love him to enjoy it. So the first battle of the Monday Night War was over. TNA's network Spike TV said they were happy if TNA could retain their normal crowd from Thursdays, but they absolutely smashed it, drawing in 2.2 million viewers. The highest rated quarter was Hogan's segment, which drew 2.5 million viewers, and aired at the exact same time as the Bret Hart segment. This was record-setting for TNA. Spike TV was so happy with the trial run that they agreed to sort it out so that TNA could move to Mondays permanently from March. It's also worth noting that the ratings showed fans tuned out as the show went on. I wonder how much that had to do with the horrible X Division X Asylum match at the start of the show. Anyway, in the next video, let's see how WWE reacts to how well TNA did. Thank you for watching. I'm Marky Danger. Make sure you hit subscribe, and no offence if you didn't like the video, but there's going to be plenty more coming, so keep tuned.